There's homework involved in this. I'm just going to do this introduction, and then I'm going to, on the notes on dominance, you're going to work on that. One of the disclaimers I have to make, I worked on this in 1999, as you can see, and when I was Betty. Well, it's, Betty Powell Associates. It's still Betty Powell Associates, but I cannot take full credit from this. This is from a packet that had more context to it. If you wish to write this down and you want to do any more work on this whole IS consciousness and the notes on dominance originally comes from the work of a person, Shri, from Power and Systems out of the University of Massachusetts. So, Barry Ashri and his associates, Power and Systems is their company work that they did. We did a week-long, that's just the name of the person, this is the name of the group, Power and Systems. We did a week-long retreat with them, and then came back and kept doing more and more work. So we all just took the material and fashioned it into our own way. So I fashioned it with this. That is a brain, if you hadn't noticed. If you hadn't concluded that is a human brain. Okay. And, okay, I know, all right. It is my free expression of a brain, okay, a human brain, which goes to this whole notion of culture. Shaped us. None of us comes from nothing. It's impossible. And in the shaping, we went through, within the context of that itty culture, we're shaped around who we are and identities and male and gender and class and all that sort of thing. And then there is the larger sense of ourselves and an affirming of this is from whom I come. You name something, even though you might be tweaking and demanding and challenging aspects of that culture. It has formed you in some way. But the human being, building on what Frida is saying, is in our sort of normal state, or our state, most of our thinking, waking moments, is in a very present I state. That, I move from the I through the world, And in that I state, it's very present, some call it very individual, rational, relatively speaking, depending on rational, and very targeted in terms of quite focused about whatever it is that you're going to do. So let's take me, for example, I use the example of myself. The whole topic of basketball. In the world now, it's so funny, on the plane I took the Arab Times and out of Kuwait, and I'm reading it, and it's got all of the information and stuff about Kuwait. I turned to the back page, and it's about the Steelers and the whatever basketball team in America that's, everybody clearly is following. I mean, basketball is just a huge world thing now. But let's just keep it in US North America, and you're beginning to have a sense of me. I am not a basketball fan. I don't really know that much about basketball in terms of really understanding the intricacies of the game. Tennis is my sport. I love baseball to some degree. But basketball I could never get into, even when we had to play it in high school. But part of the reason I resisted it in high school, and I know this has some thing, is that the gym teacher informed us that, well, we won't do the whole thing the way the boys do it. We play half court. I don't know if any of you have ever even played basketball, but it just means, so if the boys play this, that's the whole court. The girls, we played from here to there. I thought, well, that sounds messy. That doesn't sound like doing the game kind of thing. And so I never got into it, not from there or from anywhere, any aspect of my life. As I grew older, part of my resistance to it was very much a racial thing. But I did understand the value of baseball, how I really got, basketball, how I really got into kind of one aspect of the value of it was in the 70s, 1970s and 80s, when we were in part of the women's movement, and one of the things was empowering women every which way we could. So there was the move to have a women's basketball association, the WNBA, the Women's National Basketball Association, and there were those of us who, as feminists, we would go to anything that had to do with empowering women. So I went to basketball games, and it was about, being there and going, yes, yes, and still I didn't understand what basketball was. But it was, if women want to play basketball, let them do it, your kind of thing. So anyhow, all of this is by way of explaining who I am. So I remember one day that somebody was talking about sports, and it came to the basketball, and then I was saying very clearly from this present individual rational targeted way, I understand that basketball can be really empowering for women. I like that. And I remember going to women's basketball games, etc., etc. And so I'm talking in this way, very present, and somebody said, yeah, but when black women get into the basketball, it's going to be just like what happened with men in the basketball. And all of a sudden, I went from this rational, individual, I kind of thing to, what do you mean that women are going to get into it? Now I get historic, kind of thing, and group to group. You mean that women are going to be like the men? As far as I'm concerned, any basketball game is just and I called it was the first time that I coined this phrase, but it was in my head. Any basketball game, when I look at it, it's like a moving plantation. Anyhow, so I'm getting very historic, and thinking about slavery in terms of a moving plant. It's just black bodies, serving. In this case, it's the entertainment, industry, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, I will never see women, in that position. And so, and talking about the emotionality predominates. You following me here? I became historic. I went group to group. It was about my group, my people, black people and white people in terms of basketball, and the whole global response on my part was just a huge shift in my consciousness. I went to the us consciousness from the I consciousness. I don't know, again, the story is so layered and complex in terms of my own history, but I wanted you to just see a moment when I could move on a dime from I to us. That I felt positive. It felt positive to me that I was moving to that us. But often we move from the we in the world, people, move from this I consciousness to the us, or the we, in very negative, combative kinds of ways. We, it's the we kind of thing against them. The human brain is making that shift because culture has helped to shape the sense of the us, and in a way that, yes, can be positive, can be very positive, but also can be very negative, and keeps us like that with the world. There are ways in which we just, are coming up against each other. So one of the things that I would offer then for us, this on the second page, is just looking, I'm actually going to just sort of read through this. When we are the other, we are easily triggered into our us consciousness. Easily triggered into the us consciousness. Some characteristics of the us consciousness: the emotionality, feelings predominate, historic. The past exists in very powerful ways, the present. Group to group, we feel a part of the past, the present, the future of our group, and we see others as the past, present, and future of their group. It's hard for us to see people other than as a part of their group. It's hard for me to interact other than as a part of my group, kind of thing. It gets very global. We experience others and ourselves as categories. That's so important. Not as unique individuals. Global is this specific situation is experienced as a part of the whole thing. See, that's the way you people are. That's the way, you are in relationship to us. So it's a powerful, powerful pull. And I'm trying to get us to understand the nature of human beings. But because we understand it, as that is a given, doesn't mean that we can't change it. And that's, again, what Farida is inviting. I'm going on now. What is your us consciousness? You want to ask yourself for that. For some of us, it is a bigger part of our lives than it is for others. You want to think about what triggers you into your us consciousness. Do you also want to think about what do you value about your us consciousness? What don't you want to give up? And some of the ways that you were introducing how you can begin to talk with a group and engage them, again, around specific kinds of things. This is just another framing, another kind of paradigm that you might be able to use. Then this question, and can we resolve issues when we are in the us consciousness? A very hard, and I don't think there's an absolute. One of the things that I argued with Barry about is that this can be presented in a very absolute way. This is a very important way to look at things, but it's not absolute. And so he's trying to get at here that the us consciousness, staying stuck in me category, past, present, and future, you category, past, present, and future, it's hard to break through that to try to begin to have some kind of dialogue and compromise. But I maintain that it's not always absolutely impossible to negotiate from a place of what I love about us and what you love about your us. Can we talk? Can we talk? That's a possibility. But moving with his flow of thought, we get to, we are enriched by our us consciousness, yes. But isn't it also true that wars, Holocaust, and ethnic cleansings grow out of our us consciousness? You can take that and work with it however you want, again, in dealing with your folk, that yes, there's value in the us consciousness, and then give them some specific things. It doesn't have to be as global as this, about what has been wrought in that community from the various us consciousnesses that, does not serve people well. And finally, conclusion, if we are to solve problems and build community together, we need to be sensitive to, understand, and respect one another's us consciousness. But we need to interact with one another from the I. Respect, but I need to be able to hold my valuing of my us, but speak to you from as I to I. It's I to I that we get to solve our problems. Now the I might mean there's a collective of us that are, of the I's that are engaging with you, but we're not engaging with you from the past and from our categories and etc. Again, not an absolute paradigm, but for me, I offer it to you as potentially a useful paradigm in terms of looking at how do we begin to help people engage across those very difficult, basically cultural barriers, which he has here cast in a very human, kind of what the human brain does with that stuff. Okay, so hold that. Think about your own, us consciousness and what triggers you, because it's not just them and they, the them that you're working with, that are the people get all triggered about their us stuff. Each one of us gets triggered by some us stuff, right? So you just want to visit that to ground yourself in your own humanity around all of this. Culture and the dominant other, you can read this for yourself. You can move through it based on what we have done, and know again, it is US-centric, but it is infinitely translatable to your various cultures. So I want you just to read that piece, but then look at 3 and 4 and 5, and I want you to get in there, and actually the boxes on the top of page 3, I want you to identify yourself in your culture. Under each one of these categories, where are you dominant, where are you the other? And if you want to add some category that's not there that you feel is actually appropriate, in particular, I'm thinking of caste. Yes, and put it. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Do I not have disability on there? I thought I had actually. Yes. But physical disability, mental or emotional disability, as well as invisible disability. So put it in. However you want to tweak it so that you really get to the fullest description of yourself. This is not for now. I'd like you to take it and do it. And then I really want you to read through, because it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. When you look at all these categories, I changed it and use alphabets A, B, C. How do the dominants often experience the ways of the other? Common experience of the dominants as the others become more visible. And so it goes on. It's a wonderful progression of looking at dominant and other. But first, do your thing about how you fit in, and then I really encourage you strongly. I think you'll find some very useful moments of aha in here, and we'll talk about it more tomorrow. There you go. Yeah, disqualified from your culture. Yeah, yes. So you exactly. What you are expressing, what Fatou is expressing, is a dilemma that many of us face in different ways. As I said, we all belong to something. We are part of some aspect of culture. And we don't want that taken away from us. There's something very valuable. But we live in such complex existences and multiple that it is hard to pin us down and put us in a box and yes, this is your culture, and there are infinite variations on that theme that different ones of us experience. I can just to loop back in time to just give for example of me, then Betty, Jean, 1920, 62, whatever, I'm 22 years old. I come to New York from Minnesota, where I've gone to school. This is very much in the north way, away from where I was originally born in Florida, etc. And the civil rights movement is beginning to really push, on. And I found it very, very difficult to break into the civil rights movement initially because I wasn't black enough. I'm just giving an example. We all can come with, my father had been in the military, an officer after World War II. We traveled the world, the globe. I majored in French. I spoke, German and French, And I was like, yes, black power. And they're going, no, you're not black enough. Yes, black power, So, and I don't need to do any more of the story. Each one of us can have some different variations. And so, for 40, 50 years now, I have been working my own journey and having to come at one point to a point where I'm literally walking across the streets in Amsterdam and I went, I am walking across the street with this black skin. I am my own black experience. I am black enough. That took me until I was 35 years old to do that, and I'm still working it. I only give this example not to have the light focused on me, but what is your story? Each one of us, especially working as women in the 21st century, trying to work for women's rights, for political, rights, and for various groups of our people in our country, people who are not our people. We are working against the norm, against the grain. I'm sure we all have some variation of Fatou's story or my story or whatever. Well, I think we can say Ashe to that, and Amen, and Ainsi soit-il, and that's it for today, ladies. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So as we come to an end of looking at culture very specifically, I want us to become, to understand that part of what I want to have happen here, the result, is that we become more and more mindful that as important and as powerful as culture is to the individual and to every given society on the earth, no matter how important it is, how powerful it is never a done deal. That no matter, though the powers that be in any given society would want it to be, want to stay fixed, and certainly the fact that the values and customs and rituals that are passed on generation unto generation would seem to give us a sense of it's fixed. It is not. Because culture is a human construct, it is always subject to change. And as Farida so eloquently put it, within cultures, many cultures, and certainly as we are a testament to it, each one of us in our own cultures, within the cultures and develop the culture of resistance to those norms, to those cultural norms. And so that's a very critical piece. Again, expanding our notion of culture, even as we, go deeper in our understanding of it, even expand beyond that. And so as we move to our next module on I as consciousness, one of the things that we want you to really grasp there is how the notion of dominance and the other that gets set up within every culture, and then in subcultures, even within the culture, you have dominance and the other, anything. That kind of structuring, which we again want to get smarter about, so forth, really lends itself, if you like, to resistance. The notion of dominance and the other, because the other is always going to be, in some way, trying to negotiate their way to greater and greater affirmation of self and dignity and worth and value, etc., in the context of that culture. So we're going to move on now then from that culture with this understanding, of culture and the malleability, if you like, of this whole notion of culture. But we're going to now get deeper in our understanding of a huge, huge paradigm in all cultures, and that is the notion of dominance and the other.